So productive today. 3 videos. That's what happens when I have a day off. Well, not really a day off. A day off to me now is when I only work one job and not both jobs. Thanks, Obama, for the great recovery. This video is going to be a little bit more intricate, a little bit more technical. I promised someone a video on economics, and there are a couple people who either have degrees, damn close to having degrees, or have a serious hobby on economics that I follow. And I really don't like the concept of following people on Twitter. I prefer the thought of allies, people I walk arm in arm with. But that's just a minor, trivial problem. Everyone talks about the fair tax. Don't mind me looking around. I'm sitting on my porch in an apartment complex, just wondering if people are going to look at me like I'm crazy for talking to my phone. But the subject I want to talk on is the fair tax. I don't necessarily agree with the fair tax. And I'll tell you why. Because it does put, it is a good start, it is a good idea to place the burden of supporting the federal government upon the GDP. So the products that are purchased in the U.S. will thus be the basis of income for the federal government. That's a good thing. The problem I have is putting the whole thing on the consumer. That does not work logically in my mind. And I'll tell you why. Because it would force a tax rate that would be too high and too obvious, and it would actually create a burden for American business because it does not help to even the odds. And I would rather see everyone that does business in the USA pay taxes. I don't care if you are a Chinese company, an American company. Everyone that makes a profit in the USA should pay taxes in the USA. Did I suddenly sound like a liberal? I'm sorry. Trust me. So, we do have to have a federal sales tax. Now, there would be a bunch of other things involved. Sorry, I'm trying to get comfortable. Like, we'd have to have a constitutional amendment before we allowed a federal sales tax. I've talked to people about this who share my political leanings. We would have to literally have a constitutional amendment that says you cannot tax the income of people in the USA. There would be an exception to that, and I'll get to that later. I'm sorry, it's a complex issue. And I don't pretend that I have it all figured out. I'm only one person. And I can't give you the figures because, come on, Herman McCain, who is a genius, he had an entire staff work out his 999 plan. So don't expect exact figures and numbers from me, okay? I don't have that time. But we have federal sales tax. But the constitutional amendment says you cannot, it eliminates the income tax flat out. No income tax. With the exception, I know, here I go with exceptions. I'm sounding like a liberal. With the exception of when the entire country is mobilized for war. When the entire country is mobilized for war, like World War I, World War II, yes, then you can have a federal income tax. But at no other time can you have a federal income tax. And I don't think that there is anyone that is a patriotic American that would disagree with that logic. At least I hope not. So we have to have federal sales tax. 8, 9, 10%, whatever the number would require. And we'd have to have budgetary restraints just to turn around and put DC on a leash. They would have to be put on a leash. Now, it would be difficult for them to maintain a balanced budget with... I'm not trying to justify it. In fact, they need to run a surplus to pay down the debt. But it's more difficult when your income is based off of sales tax to get proper estimates and know what you're going to end up with. But you have, for the consumer, a federal sales tax. But this is where I differ from the fair tax people. I believe there has to be a business-to-business tax. Because business-to-business is a larger market than exists in retail business to consumer. It is actually a huge market. You don't realize how big the market is. It is huge. And I believe there needs to be a business-to-business tax. This will cause a number of different side effects. Because every time a business which is not owned more than 51% by another business, it has to pay a business-to-business tax. So you think about your automobile. How many different parts are contracted out all over the country, all over the world? Each one of those individual parts will be taxed. Now, you can say, that's going to make the price of my car go through the roof. It could. And companies will have to realize that, and they'll have to face that fact. So, a lot of those companies will bring production back into house. So they won't contract it out anymore. Instead of contracting out radiators, throttle switches, and everything else, they'll have to take a look at the cost and see if it would be more efficient for them to bring it back in the house and manufacture it themselves. This will, of course, help to create more jobs, bring jobs back home. I know you can say I'm living a pipe dream. Not necessarily, because in the business to business, instead of the retailer, the seller, sorry, I had an itch and I'm supporting my weight. My videos are so amateurish, and I apologize. Retail to consumer, it's the retailer that collects the tax, and they have to pay it. In business to business, instead of the seller collecting the tax, I would have the buyer collect the tax. So, think of a company like Walmart. Every single item that they buy to sell to us, they have to collect two sets of taxes. They have to collect the taxes that you pay when you buy it, and they have to collect the taxes that they pay when they buy it. They have to separate that. And this will create a situation where every single item that is sold in the U.S., no matter where it is manufactured, will be taxed. Everything that is sold in this country will be taxed. If it's made in China, that Chinese company will be paying the tax, because Walmart's going to have to figure it into the price. Now you can say now you can argue that in double jeopardy you can't tax it. Actually, it would be a tax on the buyer. It's just it'll be a tax on the seller. It's just that the corporation that buys it has to collect that tax. So that corporation will be in the U.S. and it won't hurt exports, because this same tax we can't collect overseas. So we won't have to worry about that. But everything that is overseas and sold here, you're going to pay your tax. That will, because just like an American corporation, if an American company, say you're making tires and you're selling your tires to Ford. Sorry. You're making tires and you're selling your tires to Ford. Ford is going to have to factor in the tax for the American-made products. Now, if a company overseas sold tires to Ford, they wouldn't pay the tax if they had to collect it. But because Ford has to collect it, they're going to have to pay the tax. All I'm doing is just trying to create an argument to make sure that, damn it, I'm going to sound like a liberal again. Everyone pays their fair share. Oh God, where have you heard that before? So yes, there would be business-to-business tax that has to be collected by the buyer. A consumer sales tax that has to be collected by the retailer. So yes, it can, in the cases of like Walmart, be the same company collecting two sets of taxes. Now, for the exception I warned you about. My exception is based on the stock market, the bond market, the mercantile market. The problem here is, let me back up a little bit. Fancy special effects there, like the old $6 Million Man. There would be no exemptions for taxes. No tax-free exemptions for any organization. No churches, no charities, no nothing. And I'll explain to you why. Once you open Pandora's box, everyone wants it. Now, we can look at churches for an example. No one would argue that the Roman Catholic Church is a church. It is a religion. Where do you draw the line between religion and cult? Where? Eventually you're going to end up with a Branch Davidian organization that they want tax exemption, or Jonestown, whatever his church was called. And these are obviously churches that were cults. So you have, rather than put yourself in a situation where you have to figure out where the line is going to be drawn, the same with charities. How many charities have you heard that give next to no money to the organization, the people that they are supposed to be helping? It's the same problem, same situation. Where are you going to draw the hard line? Same with political organizations. You can say the Democrats and the Republican parties are political organizations and they should be tax-free. What about Heritage? Heritage is tax-free. Do they deserve it? Acorn was tax-free. There's that Super Main Street USA, I think it was called, that PAC created by the Republican in Ohio, that he accepted money from unions to attack the Tea Party. He was a tax-free super PAC. So exactly, where do we draw the lines? I say, draw the line at the beginning. No one's tax-free. Period. Just end that argument right off the bat. If you're going to buy anything, you're going to pay taxes. Now, if people want to donate goods, say to build a new church, you go to a business, he's going to donate lumber. You go to a carpenter, he's going to donate his time. That's fine. The government doesn't even need to get involved in that, because taxes have already been paid on those goods when it was purchased. Just because he's not selling them and he's donating them, and he can't even write them off because there's no corporate income tax. So he is the lumber mill, lumber seller is donating that out of the goodness of their heart. The carpenter cannot write off his time, so he's donating his time or her time out of the kindness of their heart. Mason, it goes on and on. Plumbers, electricians. You can just go ahead and stay out of that because taxes have already been paid. So I hope that does not bother anyone. But back to the exchanges. Now this is the most complicated part. And the reason why I say that is because you have different markets. You have the stock market, the bond market. You have the currency exchange market. When you start dealing with things like currency exchange, it becomes next to impossible to regulate it at this level because of the volatility to begin with. But I'm going to try. Basically, my goal, there's still going to be income tax here because your profits are going to be taxed, capital gains tax. But my goal is to eliminate these taxes completely. I don't believe you should pay taxes on your profits. The problem is the markets are no longer resembling what they're supposed to do, what they're supposed to be. They are supposed to be an investment in a corporation for the stock markets. The bond markets are supposed to be a long-term investment. Now, commodities and currency, that's a little bit trickier, and so I'm not really going to touch that because it's like options. It's a nightmare to deal with. However, following this general logic, I'm sure somebody that understands the currency markets and the commodity markets could come up with a system based on the spirit of my idea. I'm sorry for sounding conceited, because I'm sure there are many people that could improve upon my idea and or even destroy it by throwing out concepts I never thought of that could happen, variables that could destroy my idea and put us in a worse situation. But let me continue. There would be a capital gains tax. The capital gains tax would be two different ways. First, for the normal investor. The normal investor buys their stocks on the open market. That person would suffer an 80% tax rate if they sell the stock in less than 1 year. People, I can hear you screaming at me now, 80%? But if they keep it longer than 1 year, it drops to 60. If they keep it longer than 2 years, it drops to 40, etc., until zero, no tax. So after 4 years, 20, after 5 years, you've held on to a stock 5 years, you sell all of your stock. You're not paying any taxes at all on your profits. That is all your money. You held on to it for a long-term investment, which is what the markets are supposed to be. Now, the other concept of that is stock options and employee purchase agreements, because they usually get a discount, and many of the higher end managers within an organization are able to manipulate their purchase agreements, and no matter if the stock goes up or down, they can still make money on it. And a lot of these CEOs and board members are actually cannibalizing their own company to meet the goals of Wall Street, so the stock will go up, so they can get their stock options, dump the stock, and make millions and millions of dollars. So they are destroying the company they are supposed to be leading while thinking about the long term. So I got an answer for that. If you sell your options in less than 1 year, 100% tax rate. That's even worse than before. After 1 year, 90%. After 2 years, 80, etc., 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 dropping 10% a year until finally you as well pay no tax. I haven't quite worked out a logic for dividends that makes sense, because you could also end up with the same situation where dividends would, nor a company would be cannibalizing the company or not keeping up with the proper expansion and modernization of the organization to pay out high dividends. So I haven't quite worked that aspect out, and I apologize for it. But these are just some of the random things that go through my mind while I'm at work, because my mind is constantly racing faster than my car. And the car is so hard to keep your foot out of it because it sounds so good in second gear at 5,000 RPM. Well, I will go ahead and let you go now. This one, not necessarily for the general public, and I'm sure a lot of people will attack me. I'm sorry if you attack me. I am your natural ally, unless you're a liberal. If you're on the left, I'm not. I'm your natural enemy. But those on the right, we may have many disagreements, but I'm still your ally. Much love to all of you on the right, and to those on you on the left, kiss my lily white ass.